Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to Last First Date Radio, featuring interviews with experts in dating, relating, and mating in midlife. And now, here's your host, Sandy Weiner.
Hello, everybody. This is Sandy, and welcome to Last First Date Radio, the place to be for creating healthy, lasting, loving relationships in midlife. Today, I am going to be speaking with teacher, coach, speaker Robert Kandell about the power of being honest in dating, telling the truth. And what is truth anyway? So we're going to explore all of that in just a few minutes. But I just want to say that I've been focusing my work now in a different direction. I'm still doing dating coaching, but I realize that the core work that I do with clients to help them build confidence in themselves, to show up differently in life in general, really is the part that excites me the most. And so I am creating a new website called The Woman of Value, because that has been my focus for the last few years, is helping women step into their value. So if you want to become a woman of value, I help bring a tip every single week to help you do that. And this week's tip is step number 13 in my 30 steps, which is love your body. It's like amazing how many people really not just don't love their body, they loathe their bodies. And we are given this one body. And just, I want to encourage all of you to stop being so critical of the body that you have. And what helps me is to just realize how grateful I am that I have a body, that it works, and, and just to really honor the temple that holds all of the beautifulness of who you are inside it. So be kind to yourself, be kind to others. If you're not already a member of my private Facebook group, which is called Your Last First Date, I invite you to join us. The conversation there is very positive. There's no man-bashing allowed. We have about 2,300 members, and it's not easy to create a non-chaotic, non-man-bashing group with that size. And so I have 7 monitors who all really help me keep the group safe and supportive, so that we can all be there for each other, because dating at this age is not easy, relationships are not easy, but having community is so essential. So join me at Your Last First Date. And now I'm going to tell you about Robert. Robert Kandell has been hailed as part football coach, part loving dad, and part slightly crazed drill sergeant. He has spent the last 16 years helping people build better relationships through more honest, authentic connections. He co-founded OneTaste in 2004, taking on the challenging task of bringing conscious sexuality to the mainstream market. He left that company in 2014 to start his own consulting firm, helping small businesses. Robert's also an accomplished teacher, coach, and lecturer, and he brings his enthusiasm and acumen to his weekly podcast, Tuff Love, on subjects around relationships, intimacy, communication, and gender dynamics. So join me now for episode number 302, The Power of Telling the Truth on Your Dating Journey. Welcome to the show, Robert.
Thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
Happy to have you, another podcaster.
Indeed.
So, yes, let's talk about truth. And first, can you define what truth is in this context?
Well, truth is a very personal thing, because we all come in to seeing something with our own baggage, our own filter, our own history, how we view things, what we let in, what we don't let in, what we confront and non-confront. And so a teacher of mine would say the opposite of a truth is another truth. So if I'm sitting over here saying this is blah, 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 it could be the other person just has their own version of it. And so we often get mad. You lied, or you didn't say that, or, there's all this thing about lying. But really, truth is your perception of what's happening in every moment.
Here we just had a little heated discussion in my Facebook group about people with differing opinions, and I think one of the biggest, most contentious things you can do in relationship is have right or wrong thinking. And when you look at it this way, that we just all have our own truths, and it's okay to have different opinions. So, what do you think about that? This right or wrong thinking.
I would take the lens back slightly. So there's two ways to engage with someone if you want to do two ends of the extreme. One would be what I would call collaborative. The other was I would call antagonistic, and all the grays in between the collaborative and antagonistic. And so if you're going more towards the antagonistic way of relating, you're looking for a fight. You're looking for differences. You're looking for that's not me, you did that. There's a separation between you and the other person. If you approach it more from what I call a collaborative aspect, we're co-creating. What I did to co-create that situation, or how I can see that side of the equation. This is mine. Let's find a mutual ground. A lot of people, especially in society, when they feel threatened, when part of them feels upset, they move much closer to the antagonistic, creating more distance. And what I recommend and what teach people is even in the worst moments, even in the most painful situations, see if you can move more to a collaborative, connective conversation to find resolution.
That's a nice distinction, collaborative and antagonistic. And it's like a defensiveness that when people feel that they've been hurt, they often want to hurt back. And so it's that kind of right or wrong thinking that creates arguments that are very hard to resolve because people are in two different camps, and that actually it feels like you're slamming a door in somebody's face instead of trying to connect.
Well, most people also tend to get victimized very easily. And what I mean by victimized specifically is when you're not willing to take responsibility. And I'm of the viewpoint that no one in the world has ever made you feel any way. So we say you hurt my feelings, or you did this to me, or I'm mad because of you, or all this dramatic thing that people say. What I see, and my viewpoint is that people create stimuli. And sometimes that stimuli is cruel. Sometimes that stimuli is hurtful. Sometimes that stimuli is selfish. But it's always on us and how we interpret the stimuli. It's always on us on how we relate to it. So people often blame the other person, you made me feel this way, but really that's disempowering to you. And so what I teach people is, okay, they provided some pretty awful stimuli. Now what do you want to do? And now what do you want to do? And now we always have choice down the line.
Yeah, I agree. I think also the triggers that we have are based on our history. So we hear something and we immediately think something. We make meaning.
Totally.
We
We're
create
meaning
the
making
meaning,
machines.
right?
Yep.
Yes.
I totally agree with you.
Yeah. So so it's nice to say all this, but what happens is people need to process, right? So how do they get to the point of, I'm at choice? How do they get there?
Well, it's a word that I use for many things, and it's an awful word and a wonderful word. The word is practice. And you just need, we practice to learn to play piano. We practice art. We practice golf. We practice all these things. We invest our time and energy to get better at something. So if you want to learn to handle your triggers, to handle your emotions, to have more acumen with your feelings, to have mastery, to be able to be in really challenging environments, it's practice like anything else. And so, we often pick partners, consciously or subconsciously, in areas we want to grow, or childhood wounds. There's a big imago in, Getting the Love You Want, Harville Hendrix, item. So we often pick people or magnetize people into our lives. So the first thing I always do is take responsibility or see how you've co-created this relationship, how you've invited challenging or dramatic things into your life, And then just be like, I'm going to make a practice, maybe to gritted teeth, but I'm going to make a practice so I can get better and better at handling challenging situations.
Yeah, I love the whole imago thing, and I think that there's so much truth about this. And most of the time it's very unconscious, but these are our greatest teachers, and we are able to work through all this stuff with partners. And I think this is also, just makes me think of another topic, which is that a lot of people think they have to do all this healing before they're in relationship. And I believe that you should do healing, but also that you continue to heal with the right partners. And what do you have to say about, like, do you have to come already cooked for that relationship to work? Or, you know, is there a lot of value in working through stuff with a partner?
I think coming all the way cooked or healed, I think that's a fallacy and a dangerous fallacy. I don't think, you know, it's like we'll never reach the point of enlightenment. Who would want to? Why do we ever want to stop learning or growing or getting better at things? So it's not so much we come in with these, cooked feeling. The best way to walk into a relationship is the skills to handle the dynamic evolution that happens inside relationships. To say, okay, I'm falling in love, I'm risking my heart again, there's a possibility I might get hurt, but I have the skills when the bumps in the road hit that I'll be able to handle it. And I'll have a support system that if I'm with a partner that challenges me, I have my girlfriends or my guy friends, my therapists, my social groups, your group, your Facebook group. I know I can go there if my guys drive me crazy, I don't know what to do. So it's a mixture of building your ability to face challenges and also having the support when you're out of your range, when you feel isolated, that you have someone to go to so you can feel supported.
That's a really good answer. I think that there's a real danger in waiting so long to get back into dating that there's so much fear that builds up that people just avoid it. And I've seen a lot of that. Yeah. So what are some of the challenges in the dating world today when it comes to, anything? I mean, what do you see as some of the challenges?
Well, I think everything is more challenging now than it was, 15, 20 years ago. I think it's a really rough time, and I think it's going to get rougher for a while. I think the advent of social and apps have made things worse in terms of levels of intimacy. And what I mean by this specifically is in our swipe left, swipe right world, people know that there's a plethora of options. And whereas, 20, 25 years ago, it was harder to have options, and now it's like on your phone with 10 million other people in your region or your state that you can connect to. So people are hitting road bumps, and instead of riding through the road bump, through the challenges, they're leaving, especially men, they're leaving, picking up their phone, launching Tinder, and starting all over again. There's sort of this willingness to figure out the bigger and better deal is somewhere on the phone and avoiding and missing out on a lot of opportunities of growth and intimacy.
I agree with you. I think that's the paradox of choice, that we have so many choices that people end up not choosing and not going deeper. And I think also we're not communicating. We have texting instead of talking. And I instruct women to be assertive, like just say, I don't connect well through text, especially as I'm getting to know somebody. Just ask for what you want. Do you have any tips for, how to combat some of the obstacles we have today?
I think it's hard. I think another piece of the puzzle, and I work a lot with men, I've done a lot of research with men. Men, what's happening in society is women are really becoming more empowered on a lot of different levels. If you look at the pay grade, you look at people getting married later, having kids later, the whole dynamic of romance has changed in the last 1 or 2 generations. And what I'm seeing is women are becoming more powerful and men are actually at the point of giving up. and they're like, I'm just going to go to my video games. I'm going to go to my porn. I'm not going to step up. And so I think there's a real wake-up call for men to stand up and say, I'm not sure how to interact with a powerful woman. And there's a wake-up call for women to be a little more patient and understand the challenges they go through in this evolving world. So I think that's a really important piece that's not being talked about enough. There's a lot of statistics that are showing how it's challenging for a man to feel like a man in today's society.
Yeah, I actually speak about this a lot because I agree with you. I think a lot. I see the women in my group who are like, I'm not going to initiate anything, and I want a man to chase me, and if I can't, if he won't pursue me, and it's like there's so many mixed messages, and they can't stand it when a man seems weak or he wants a woman to pay for a date, and there's just so much confusion out there. And I think that, again, this is like a communication thing. I think that we have to, number one, be educated about each other. We have to understand who we are. We also have to speak up and ask for what we want. With all the consent, that's also something that's gotten completely out of control. I know this isn't the topic of today's show, but it's okay because it's an important thing. I think with consent, I think a lot of times men will come off as being scared to do anything. They have to ask permission. And I don't think that's what consent is about. I think consent is ideally where two people talk together about what each wants, and they honor each other's preferences instead of imposing or assuming. To me, that's the ideal consent. How do you feel about that?
Absolutely. It's funny. I was just writing about this in the book I'm working on. This concept of confusing, because women are like, I don't want them to ask me everything, but then men are being called out into society as rapists because they didn't have enough attention on her during her date. So there's a lot of mixed messages, and men are really just like, it's not worth it. I don't want to end up on the cover of a newspaper or Time. Like, there's a lot of fear around there. And so I actually am a really big fan of something I saw in a movie called Hitch, the Will Smith method. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but I loved it when he talked about kissing, and he talked about Kevin James leaning in 90% and waiting for the woman to cross the lead 10%. I think that's an incredible analogy of how men can have both, to show both the initiative and the desire, because women do like that, but also letting her cross that last 10%, which is a form of consent. It informs the man, yes, I'm on the right direction, not just to grab, but to go 90% so she can feel his desire and then give her the choice to respond.
That's great. I never really looked at that in terms of consent, but I also really like that part. It's a great movie. I think that really captures it, because I think that women want a man who takes charge to some degree and isn't just waiting for a woman to instruct him on everything. And I think women, especially the women who come to me, they've been doing so much for so long that they don't want to do everything. I'm clear when I'm dating again after divorce, and I carried the weight of my marriage, the weight of a lot of the decision making, and I don't want to do that in all my relationships. I do it at work. I run my own business, and I tell men, I love when a man makes a plan. Like, that's really attractive to me. It doesn't mean he has to make every plan, but it means that when I get home, I don't want to make every decision anymore. I want it to be more collaborative, and I want him to also make some of the plans, because I'm exhausted.
Well, I tell men, here's the best trick or technique here. Offer a woman a menu. So sometimes you'd be like, a guy will say, where do you want to go to dinner? And the woman's like, I don't know. And then the man has two choices. One, he can just push it back on her or make a decision and take the risk of it. There's a middle spot, and the middle spot is offering her a menu. Okay, great. Do you know what genre of food do you want? Do you want Asian? Do you want salad? Do you want American? Do you want Italian? Oh, Asian. And you're like, okay, cool. And then he'd be like, oh, there's this new pho place we talked about, remember, a few weeks ago? And she's like, yeah. And so all of a sudden, it's not the man putting the responsibility on the woman, but it's a collaborative thing where he's holding the weight but doing it with her. And the chances of both them being happy at the restaurant skyrocket. And so you can take that analogy to everywhere. You can take it to, like, just showing effort. Women do not want to be mothers to their partners. They feel maternal. They feel love. They want to take care of their partners, but they don't want to be a mother. My wife talked about her first husband as a third child. And it was horrible because she was taking care of him along with their two kids. And so I worked very hard not to be a child. I took very hard to take care of her, take care of myself, handle my emotions, be connective, let her lead times, I lead other times, and then in the collaboration, there's so much more power, enjoyment, and intimacy.
I like the idea of taking turns leading and taking care of your emotions. You said two really important things there. So here's another thing. A lot of women complain about this mommy thing, and I certainly was in that spot too. But after my divorce, when I started taking responsibility for all of my actions and thoughts and words, I realized that I co-created that space. The more, what happens is, and I think, you talked about the leaning in and the leaning back, I think often when somebody doesn't come through for you, you start leaning in more and more and more, and then the space closes up. And so one person ends up carrying the weight, and the other person says, well, I don't have to do anything. This person's going to do everything. So if you want to, create this, if you want somebody to step up, you've got to lean back and make the space. And you've got to ask for what you want. So it's a combination. Your wife told you that she doesn't want to be a mother. You take responsibility for your feelings, your needs. I mean, if everybody could do that, we'd have much better relationships.
It's true. And so I think the important piece also is I suspect there was some point in the beginning of the relationship where you felt this is happening and you thought you knew it was an issue, but you didn't talk about it. You didn't communicate it. On some level, you non-confronted it. And then it happened again, you non-confronted it. And then it happened again, you non-confronted it. We co-create these things because we're not willing to be honest. We're not willing to risk an argument or a fight or hurting a male ego. And so what we do is we withhold. We live hidden. We live with all this pain on the inside. And that's the detriment. That's the cancer of relationships, is every time you lie, you take your relationship and set it more towards mediocrity. So I counsel couples to say the truth as clear as you can say it in the moment. If you need time to process it, that's fine too, but have as quick as possible to bring what's inside out. So there's not this baggage. And so there's no chance of resentment because you said it. And sometimes you have to say it 20 times. Put the toilet seat down. Put the toilet seat down. Put the toilet seat down. Or it'd be really nice if you took out the garbage. It would really be nice if you asked me how my day was when you came home. Keep reminding each other. Keep educating each other so you don't let the other person off the hook so you never end up in those forms of relating.
So I have a question about that, because if you have to keep saying it over and over and over, most people give up. And it gets annoying. You feel ignored, and you can build resentment that person doesn't think your need is important enough. So something that I learned, I think, from Alice Armstrong, I'm pretty sure, was to give meaning to the request. What was that?
Oh, of course. The best ever. Love Alice Armstrong.
Yeah. So, like, just saying take out the garbage is very different from when you take out the garbage. It makes me feel so supported, and it makes me really happy, which is a much different motivator than take out the damn garbage. I told you 85 times already. What's wrong with you? So do you have any other tips in terms of making a request so that a person can hear it better?
Yes, I took a shortcut. I totally agree with you. To To share with your partner the motivation behind the request is of paramount importance. And so sometimes that takes longer, and sometimes that's even more vulnerable and challenging. If you have a secret desire that you have shame about and you want to ask your partner about it, they're going to feel your shame. They're going to feel your doubt. And so sometimes you have to, take the leap. He might reject me. She might not understand. Or she might think that's really weird or dangerous or something. And so, we get into relationships and then we hide these parts of ourselves. So the thing I recommend is if you know you're withholding something from your partner, one is to sit with it first, to get right with your desire. Go to the therapy, do your journal writing, talk to your girlfriend about it. Just get right with your own desire. The second step is to ask for a clear space without distraction, without kids or cell phones or TV or even music, where you could have a conversation about your desire. The third part, which may seem counterintuitive, is to apologize for not revealing this desire in the past. Honey, I've been thinking about this thing for a couple of months. I was scared to tell you this because I was afraid how you'd react, but I think it's really important. And so I just want to apologize for withholding this from you. The next thing is to share the desire and the motivation behind it, and then be quiet and let your partner have their feelings. Then hear your partner's feelings, listen fully, then you respond to his feelings and back and forth until it gets flat. And if you're willing to take these steps on the things that matter because you want to be closer to your partner, then the intimacy and relationship will grow. That's my framework of how to speak your desire.
I like that. I'm taking notes. I think that one of the things that I'm passionate about is helping women communicate more effectively. And even when I will ask a client, what are you feeling, most people don't even know what a feeling is, and I feel that he's judging me. That's not a feeling. And it's really important to name what's going on and to really get clarity. And also when we speak up, to first know what our intention is. I mean, I find that also, like today I was coaching a client about an issue she was having with her grandson's future spouse. And this woman is very combative and reminds her of her mother. And so there's all these triggers coming up, and they had this major power lock, terrible first meeting. And I suggested that she have a private coffee with her or something to really try to get off on a better foot. And I said, what would you say to her? And she said, I'm going to tell her I will not be spoken to that way. And I said, okay, well, that's not going to create the kind of atmosphere that you want. What's your intention? And so her intention at first was just to be defensive and say, don't treat me this way. But when we started to coach about it, her intention really is to create a better relationship and to connect. And I think when you start out really saying, I care about you, I care about my grandson, I want to have a good relationship, and you start out with kindness, you start out with a positive intention, you're going to have a better experience in that conversation.
I mean, that's exactly it. That's the collaborative aspect versus the antagonistic. And sometimes you have those feelings, like, the one partner has been really rude or mean or did something wrong, and you have feelings about it. Their stimuli invoke triggers inside of you. Those triggers are right. Those feelings are right. That's the thing. It's like those emotions that got stirred up need to be taken care of, and you don't necessarily need to do that with your partner. I have a great therapist where I go and spill my guts about a topic, and then we churn it and look at it. He knows me really well, and we pull it apart. And then, bing, the light goes off, and then I go home and talk to my wife about the feelings. And then, it's sort of distilled. It still has electricity, but he's got it from kind of vague to laser focus. It's important for her to know the effect that she's had on me or the actions had on me. But she doesn't need to know all the stuff that's my baggage, my trigger, unless it's interesting to her. But the point is that you can do the external work, honor your feelings, honor your triggers, and then bring it to your partner.
So important. Well, that's a good place to end. This is such a good conversation, Robert, and I would love to have our audience know how they can find you. Can you just let them know?
Yes. I'm building a new website. It's robertkandell.com. I look forward to my old website until it's up in a couple of weeks. But robertkandell.com, it has my podcast. It'll have a way to get information about my upcoming book. That's due November 5th, and a way to pre-order that. Some articles up there and other fun stuff. So everything can be found at robertkandell, that's with a K.com.
Okay, perfect. And what's your new book called?
The new book is called Unhidden, a book for men and those confused by them. And it's a pragmatic guide for men how to live in this challenging world. And it's a pragmatic guide for all other genders who love men and want to understand them to kind of get into a man's thinking so they can understand what's going on.
Sounds great. I can't wait.
Okay.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this wonderful conversation today and for doing the work you do in the world to make it a better place.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Sure. And thanks, everybody, for listening today, and I hope you go on your last first date very soon. Have a great day.
Thank you.